It is that time, Fantasy Football 2020. This is the first time I'm making a fantasy video. I'm a bit late on it. It's August 21st, but I think this year, especially this year, people are pushing their drafts back because of the crazy world we're in right now. So hopefully you guys didn't draft yet. But in this video, we're going to be doing some league winners for 2020, in my opinion. There's some other future fantasy videos I'm going to put out, probably some sleeper videos, a bust one, and also a overvalued. So I have at least a few more fantasy football videos coming out. Hopefully you guys enjoy these. Leave in the comments who you think the 2020 league winners can be. They can be in any round, first round, 10th round, 15th round, whoever you think is going to be a league winner this year. Let me know in the comments. Hopefully we agree on some of these picks. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and let's get into it. Number one, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This guy has been gaining a lot of hype around the fantasy football community and the NFL community in general. So Edwards-Helaire is honestly one of my favorite players. I love them in the draft, and if you watch my videos back after the draft, I had some of my favorite picks and their fits for their team. I thought Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a great fit for the Chiefs. I am not a person that vouches for running backs to go in the first round in real NFL drafts, of course fantasy, but real NFL drafts. But for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think it made a lot of sense. He's in a perfect situation right now on a great team, and even better, Damian Williams, his backup or even co-starter at the time, has decided to sit out the 2020 season due to the COVID-19 concerns. So right now his only competition is DeAndre Washington, who was a backup for the Raiders for a while, Darrell Williams, he was there the last couple years as well, and Darwin Thompson, who was a rookie last year, didn't really play that much, honestly, a little bit towards the end of the year, but I'm not too scared about him. So he plays in an offense that they'll definitely have a lot of leads this year. They will definitely see a lot of goal line opportunities. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire proved to us in college he's the type of guy that can catch the ball. He had a ton of receptions last year. I think it was over 50, which is a lot for college football. So I love his skill set. He's very shifty. He has incredible balance. His yards after contact is good. Good pass catcher, as I said, and can definitely run with some power, which would definitely help on some goal line situations. So, I mean, also based on the track record and history of first-round picks in the NFL doing well in fantasy their first year, we've seen a lot of recent examples of it. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, even think back to Trent Richardson, guys like that. So when teams invest first-round picks in a running back, they want to use them. They want to showcase those guys, and especially with Damian Williams being out for the year, I trust the talent, and I trust the team, of course, for the Chiefs. Their offense is going to be great. No more LaShawn McCoy or whoever was there last year. I think it was LaShawn McCoy. But no more of him. It's now Clyde Edwards-Helaire's backfield, and I think as long as he stays healthy, guaranteed a top 10 running back, and I think has the potential to be in the top 5. So I know he's going a bit high in drafts right now. You might have taken him in the mid-first, and honestly, once you get to that 6th, 7th pick, I'm fine with it. I mean, after you get past like the Zeke, the CMC, the Saquon, maybe Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, once you get past that group, I'm kind of like, yeah, if you want to take him, go ahead. I'm not saying it's a bad pick, so we'll have to see what happens, but I'm very high on him right now and think he can be a league winner in 2020. Number 2 is Miles Sanders, the Philadelphia Eagles running back, a second-round pick last year, I believe. So right now he's out due to a lower body injury, but he says he will play week 1. The coaches said the same thing as well, so I'm not really too concerned about it. Honestly, it's probably a good thing because you don't want guys to get hurt in training camp, especially this year. So Doug Peterson, their head coach, is notorious for these running backs by committees, and of course as fantasy players we hate seeing that, but honestly towards the end of last year he proved he can lean on Miles Sanders, and he's been the coach there for a long time. I think since 2016 or so I think Doug Peterson has been there, so it's a long track record, but honestly, has he ever had a talent of Miles Sanders in his backfield? I'm trying to think. Ryan Matthews might have been his best back at one point. They had Jordan Howard last year, Jay Ajayi at one point as well. They didn't have the best backs there in Philadelphia. They had LeGarrette Blount as well. They didn't have a Miles Sanders type of guy is what I'm trying to say, and he proved last year, towards the end of the year, especially after the Week 10 bye, Sanders saw a lot of uptick in his usage. He was having games where he was getting between 15 and 20 carries, and the first half of the year he was getting between like 6, 9, something like between there. So it wasn't that great. He was getting a lot of receptions as well. He was getting 4 to 5 a game, which definitely helps in these PPR leagues. He plays on a good team, a solid offensive line, and I think he's very talented himself. I mean, he definitely has top 5 running back upside in my opinion. So Of course, things could go wrong here. Maybe his lower body injury hinders him throughout the year. I'm not counting on that, but it could happen. Maybe Doug Peterson goes back to his old ways and wants to split time with Boston Scott and whoever else they have there. But Miles Sanders is by far the most talented running back in their backfield, so I figure you might as well use him. He's on a good team. I think he'll get a lot of opportunities this year, and he's a very talented kid. So if he's actually given the workload and can stay healthy, he has the potential to be a league winner for sure, and as I said, can be a top 5 running back in 2020. Next, we have Kenyan Drake, the running back for the Cardinals. You saw him in the thumbnail, so of course he was going to be in here. He does have Chase Edmonds to compete with, who is a pretty good player. I mean, he tore up my New York Giants last year, looked like Barry Sanders in that game, but he's a pretty good player. I just don't think he'll take away that many carries from Kenyan Drake to the point where I'm too concerned about it. So he's playing on a franchise tag right now. He's going to be motivated. He's playing for that big contract. The Cardinals didn't want to commit to him for a long-term deal, but he's going to be motivated for that money this year. And this is his first full season really as a starter. He's never gone into a training camp, I feel like, when he's known he's the guy. This is the first time he's known he's the guy, so I'm sure that'll motivate him along with the contract as well. When he was in Miami, they always wanted to split time with him and whoever else was there. Probably wasn't a good idea because Kenyan Drake was probably more talented than the 34-year-old Frank Gore at the time, but that's Adam Gase's problem. So in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, I think it's great for running backs. It's a spread offense. You spread all these guys out. Usually the box is not stacked. We won't see many, 7, 8, 9 stack boxes. We won't see stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of open holes for a guy like Kenyan Drake who possesses good vision, good breakaway speed, and he's also a pretty good receiver. So last year, I just want to point this out as well. David Johnson was like a top, I think, 7 or 6 running back last year. I vouched for David Johnson last year on this channel when talking about fantasy football. Of course, people in the comments got mad afterwards, but look, the guy was a top 6 running back at one point. I couldn't predict he was going to get hurt, but the point is, in this Cardinals offense, even though they don't have the best offensive line, Cliff Kingsbury found a way with his spread offense to make the running back's job a lot easier and gave them a lot of fantasy points. So Drake averaged 5.2 yards per carry in 8 games for Arizona last year. And if you combine or if you double his 8 games in Arizona last year over a full season, the 16 games, you're looking at a season of almost 1,300 rushing yards, 56 receptions, and 342 receiving yards, and 16 touchdowns for Kenyan Drake. And those numbers are pretty insane. I don't think he'll reach those kind of numbers. Maybe, it's possible, but to set realistic expectations, I think him being a top 10 running back is definitely possible. He'll probably gain some steam as drafts go on. I think he's definitely a top 10 running back ranks wise at this point, but I think he'd be worth it. I know some people are probably skeptical because Kenyan Drake's never been a full-time starter for a full 16-game season, but I think this is the right situation for him. He's going to be motivated, as I said. He's in a great system, and I say why not? Another downside for him is that he had 3 monster games for Arizona and didn't do much in the rest of them. So I wouldn't really rely on him to be a week-by-week contributor and be like a solid, steady type of guy. But Kenyan Drake's going to have weeks where he just goes off and might single-handedly win you a week. So is it worth it to you? That's your decision. But I think at the end of the season, Kenyan Drake's rank in the fantasy football is going to be really good. I think he'll be a top 10 back and has the potential to be top 5. So we'll see what happens, but I like him a lot for 2020. Next, we have James Conner, and this is a tough one because, honestly, a lot of it relies on Ben Roethlisberger's health. I think we should know that based on what happened last year. But Conner only played in 10 games last year, and honestly, it seemed like he was banged up the entire season. So the Steelers are a team that always seems to produce running back 1 numbers. We think back to Le'Veon Bell, and even when Bell was out, think back to D'Angelo Williams, I think back in 2015 or 2016 it was. He came in and was putting up like 30 fantasy points per game. So this system for the Steelers, they have a great offensive line. They lean on their running backs. They don't really do running back rotations. They lean on one guy. It's always great for a running back. And then, of course, when Le'Veon sat out in 2018, put in James Conner, does tremendous, and I think was a top 10 running back that year. So, with Roethlisberger, I think he'll be a really good player. He's in a contract year as well. He's on the final year of his rookie deal, so he'll be looking to get paid for sure. Needs to stay healthy, wants to put up great numbers. Here it is. He was the number 6 running back in half PPR leagues in 2018, and now he's ranked number 18 by Fantasy Pros. So that's kind of interesting. If you have top 6 upside and everything's going to be the same this year, you get Roethlisberger back, you have your outside weapons. I'm like, why would you rank him at 18 and not maybe in the top 12 at least or something like that? So if people want to sleep on James Conner, that's their problem, but I definitely am interested in taking him. He has running back 1 type upside for you, or top 12 I should say. And honestly, there's not much competition at all. I picked up Benny Snell last year, his backup. That guy was awful. Then behind him is Jalen Samuels. Fine, he's a pretty good receiver, but between the tackles, not too impressive. So James Conner, I don't want to say has the entire backfield to himself, but ultimately kind of does. That's how they run that team there. They have one running back, and if someone gets hurt, then they put the next guy in. But for the most part, it'll be 80% usage or more for James Conner, and if he stays healthy, he'll probably put up monster numbers and probably score a lot of touchdowns as well. So I think he'd be a great value pick going at the 18th running back this year. Next, we have a wide receiver. It's Adam Thielen for the Vikings. So he missed 6 games last season due to a hamstring injury, I believe it was. Now there's no Stephon Diggs. They fill that spot with Justin Jefferson, who still has to build chemistry with Kirk Cousins. I know he's a very talented player, a first-round pick, I believe. I expect him to be a good player one day, but he won't be as good as Stephon Diggs in year 1. I would find that hard to believe. So he should have a very high number of targets, Adam Thielen in 2020, and hopefully Minnesota passes the ball more because, they lost Kevin Stefanski. He loved running the ball. Mike Zimmer likes running the ball, but he, calls defensive plays. So it really depends what Gary Kubiak does for the offense this year. But hopefully they pass the ball a little bit more for Adam Thielen and his fantasy stock. So we'll have to see what happens. And also the Vikings are losing a lot of talent this year. Think about their offseason. Everson Griffin leaves, Stephon Diggs, Linval Joseph. They lost both of their starting cornerbacks. So there are some holes there, and that team might not be as good. I had them on a list for teams that might decline in 2020, in my opinion. So they might not be a team that's going to play from ahead all the time like they did last year in most cases. So they might be from behind. The game script might favor the passing game more. And I think Adam Thielen has proved to us he's a great receiver. Just 2 years ago in 2018, he had 113 receptions, 1,300 yards, almost 1,400, and 9 touchdowns. So that's phenomenal. If you can get anything around that, then you're getting a great value here. I'm trying to think. He's going behind guys like Amari Cooper, Juju Smith-Schuster, DJ Moore. I would say, Adam Thielen over all 3 of those guys for sure. So maybe Thielen is breaking down. I don't think he's that old. He might be 30 years old or so, but still, if he stays healthy, the guy's going to get a crazy amount of targets, in my opinion. We'll have to see how much the Vikings pass the ball, but especially in PPR leagues, I think he can be a steal. He had to fight for slot snaps with Stephon Diggs, and yes, Justin Jefferson is more of a slot receiver, I get that, but you're going to give it to the guy with seniority. You're going to give it more to Adam Thielen. He's a stud. I think he's a great receiver, and if he stays healthy, he'll put up some great numbers in 2020. Next is another wide receiver. It's Odell Beckham Jr. for the Browns. So Odell found a way last year to have over 1,000 yards. I believe played in all 16 games. It was 16 or 15, one or the other. And he played in 2019 basically with an injury the entire time. He had a core injury, required surgery. So I think he injured himself in August, played the whole season with that, still found a way to have a good season. And, he admitted this is one of his first off seasons in at least a few years where he is basically completely healthy. So I'm excited to see what an actual healthy Odell Beckham can do. He's been rehabbing a lot, but now this is the first time in a while he's actually healthy for it. So the Browns offense should be a night and day difference in my opinion. I know I talked about Kevin Stefanski in a negative way for Adam Thielen's fantasy impact, but I love Kevin Stefanski as a play caller. I think that Browns offense will be a lot more efficient and find ways to move the ball better this year. I think Freddie Kitchens was terrible for that team. Their offensive line was not good at all. Now they add 2 good tackles, Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin. That offensive line will be a lot better in my opinion. You have Jarvis Landry to take some pressure off you. You add Austin Hooper, David Njoku. Odell Beckham will not get a ton of attention, but I do think Odell will see some more targets this year. He had 133 last year. That's not a lot in my opinion for a guy as talented as Odell. He should have at least 150 or so, maybe 160 around there. Maybe they get him around that number, and I think he'll be a lot more efficient this year. I think he'll get back to that double-digit touchdown type of guy that he once was back for the Giants. He only had like 4 last year, and I think this can be a type of year where Odell puts up maybe 90 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns, which would be great return on investment. Some people are scared of him because of the injury history. I get it. He missed basically most of 2017, not the whole thing, but most of it. He missed 4 games in 2018, played a lot last year, but of course was kind of ineffective. He did have a pretty decent season. So if this is the year people want to sleep on Odell Beckham, then so be it, but I'm going to be a guy that's probably going to take him in the 3rd round or so. If he's sitting there, I think still has wide receiver 1 upside and can definitely see it happening this year. Next is Kyler Murray. So I'm definitely a guy in fantasy, especially one quarterback leagues, where I like to wait on my quarterback, and it helped last year for some people who took Lamar Jackson in God knows what round, 14, 15, whatever it was. But Kyler Murray last year finished as the quarterback 7, and I do think if there's going to be a Lamar Jackson type breakout guy at quarterback this year, it's going to be Kyler Murray in my opinion. So I absolutely love this guy. One of my favorite draft prospects at quarterback, and this is a team that threw the ball over 34 times per game last year, and it's an offense that definitely got a lot more weapons. They get a good right tackle, in my opinion, in Josh Jones in the draft. So this team's offensive line, it's not the best. I get it. I mentioned that in the Kenyan Drake part of it. But they got DeAndre Hopkins, top 5 wide receiver in the game, could argue top 3. Christian Kirk, who we'll talk about later, hint, hint. And then Larry Fitzgerald. And there's a bunch of 2018 rookies that'll get better. Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, Keyshawn Johnson, guys like that that'll get better. So this offense is very exciting. I had picked 3 Cardinals, I believe, during this video. So there's another one later who I just hinted at. But I'm a big fan of this offense for sure. They run a bunch of plays. Kingsbury's offense tries to get in the most plays possible, so you're going to get your volume there for sure. Murray's going to throw the ball a lot. And don't forget about Murray's rushing upside. I mean, he had 544 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground last year, so you can't, forget about that stuff either. So as I said, if one quarterback this year can break out and be the Lamar Jackson type that wins you your league, it could be Kyler Murray. I know it'll cost you a 5th or 6th round pick this year as compared to where Lamar Jackson went last year, but I do think there's a world where it's worth it. I think Kyler Murray can be that good. So, as I said, I would rather wait for a quarterback, but if you're in a situation where you can get Kyler Murray at good value, or if it's a 2 quarterback league, he's definitely going to be taken by me. So I'm definitely high on him, and we'll see what happens, but I think Kyler Murray and the rest of the Cardinals offense will have a really nice year fantasy-wise in 2020. Next, we have running back Cam Akers. He was out of Florida State, now plays for the Los Angeles Rams. So he averaged nearly 5 yards per carry on a pretty bad team. I'm not the biggest college football guy, but even I know that Florida State has not been that good in recent years. So he was still really good there, really effective. Of course, the Rams lost Todd Gurley to the Falcons, so he touched the ball 254 times last season. Those are vacated touches right there that need to go to somebody else, and I think Cam Akers can be that guy for sure. And as we know, Sean McVay loved to use Todd Gurley a lot his first 2 years when he was there back in 2017, 2018. Todd Gurley touched the ball a ton, and I think Cam Akers can be that type of guy. He has a workhorse build. He's 5'11", 212. People compared him to Mark Ingram. I think that's a pretty decent comparison. I think he has a bit more upside than Mark Ingram, but he touched the ball 600 times in 3 seasons, over 600 times, 3 seasons at Florida State, so we know he has that durability. I'm not concerned about that at all. Now, his main competition is Darrell Henderson, who I was a pretty big fan of talent-wise. I don't think he's an every down back, doesn't have the build for it, but as a scat back and a guy that can break off big plays, I think Darrell Henderson's very good at that. But as I said, I don't think he's an every down back, so I think their early down duties, unless Malcolm Brown, whoever it is, has a breakout season, I think it's going to be Cam Akers' job. So we'll have to wait and see, of course, but Cam Akers should be that guy that gets the workhorse role at some point. So whether it's week 1, week 6, sometime before the fantasy playoffs, I think this pick will be worth it, and I think he definitely can be a league winner. I know the Rams' offensive line definitely was not good in 2019. Pro Football Focus ranked them 25th heading into 2020. But look, even at Florida State, Cam Akers didn't have the best offensive line and still put up good numbers. So I'm not too concerned about it. He also adds pass catching upside, which would help in PPR leagues, and he'll probably be the goal line back unless once again Malcolm Brown comes in and steals that. That would be a shame, but I don't see that happening. So I think Cam Akers can definitely be a league winner. It depends how Sean McVay wants to use him, but if he uses him anyway like he used Todd Gurley, it definitely could be a league winning pick. Next, we have Josh Jacobs. So in my bold prediction video last year, I had Josh Jacobs finishing as a top 12 running back, and although he just missed that, I think he was number 18, he did miss 3 games towards the end of the year, so he could have got it, but he was a very high option as a running back 2, a very high-end running back 2. So Jacobs suffered a bad shoulder injury in week 7. I think it was in Green Bay. He tried to play through it, ended up missing 3 games towards the end of the year, as I said, but he still managed over 1,100 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns while missing those games. So John Gruden, based on his days, even back in Tampa Bay, and even what he did last year with Josh Jacobs, he's proved that he loves to have a running back 1 to lean on. He's not really a split carries type of guy. He just wants to lean on one running back. Very old school in that regard, so I like that about him. And this is a guy, Josh Jacobs, that this team used the first round pick on. So, of course, they want to get a return on their investment. And the Raiders, they could compete this year. I don't expect it personally, but they're not really a rebuilding team right now, so they're going to try and win. They're probably going to try and lean on Josh Jacobs as much as possible. Their offensive line, honestly, is not too bad. And I think, this is a guy that does have top 5 upside if the targets go up. So last year he only saw 28 targets, which is not a lot. I mean, Josh Jacobs needs at least 50-something targets in my opinion, hopefully more than that. But if Josh Jacobs can get to that 50 reception mark and do what he did on the ground last year, we're talking about a top 6-7 back, probably, maybe even better. So we'll have to see how much they incorporate him in that passing game. So, it's kind of annoying because he has that ability. He definitely can catch the ball. They just didn't do it last year for some reason. So another good thing is there's not much competition behind him. I talked about how he's a first-round pick. They want to use him, but the guys behind him are not that great either. Jalen Richard's more of a pass-catching back. DeAndre Washington, as we mentioned, is not on this team anymore. So it's really Josh Jacobs' backfield and his job to lose. So, I mean, he should be fine as long as he's healthy. Even last year when he wasn't healthy, he was still putting up good numbers, and I think he can definitely be a breakout pick this year. But as I said, the receptions need to jump up for sure. Next, we have Christian Kirk. So I mentioned I have 3 Cardinals in here, and I have Kyler Murray as a breakout, and I think this year 3 wide receiver right here, Christian Kirk, can definitely be one. So some people may view DeAndre Hopkins going there as a negative. I view it as a positive because Kirk's a big play guy. He's not going to rely on target share and volume to be effective. He needs to benefit from having softer coverage and making those big plays. And having DeAndre Hopkins on the field and having those safeties have their attention to him will definitely make Christian Kirk's job easier. And even having Larry Fitzgerald there as well. So Kirk's a big play guy. It seemed like him and Kyler Murray had some sort of chemistry last year. They had some big games together. He had like 3 touchdowns against Tampa Bay once, so that was a great game for him, obviously. So the potential's there. And Kirk's numbers have definitely jumped in the right direction or trending in the right direction in the past couple years. So he went from 500 yards his rookie year to 700 yards in year 2. I think can be around 1,000 yards this year, honestly, and maybe like 5 or 6 touchdowns if things go the right way. He's not a big touchdown guy, but I think if he has enough receiving yards and makes enough big plays, then I think the touchdowns will come. So he's right now the 39th wide receiver being drafted, which I think is incredibly low in my opinion. He should be in that 25 to 30 range. I would take a lot of people behind Christian Kirk that they have in front of him. So to me, he'll be a good value pick. He's not going to be like the greatest thing ever. He's not going to have 1,400 yards, but I think can be a very solid wide receiver too, and can be consistent. And he'll have his blow-up games where, what he did in Tampa last year, where he has the 2 or 3 touchdowns and the 150 receiving yards and can definitely win you a week. So I think Christian Kirk will be a nice pick. I might be have too many eggs in one basket here on the Cardinals offense, but as I said, I like them a lot. I think Christian Kirk can be a breakout player this year. Next, we have Robert Woods. So last year, if you watched my fantasy videos, I was all over his teammate Cooper Kupp, who had a really good year, honestly. He had that 1 week where he had 0 and kind of screwed me. But for the most part, Cooper Kupp was really good. But I'm making the transition to Robert Woods in 2020. So Woods is under a big contract, yes. But if you look at it closely, he can easily be cut next year and the Rams could save $9 million. So I think in his head, he's probably motivated to say, hey, I need to have a big year once again or else they can cut me next year and I don't get my $9 million. So that's probably in the back of his mind, honestly. So the motivation is there. And Woods has a great resume when it comes to staying on the field. He's always been healthy. He's one of the best run blockers they have at wide receiver especially. And he's had over 130 targets in each of the last 2 years. So he's a guy that just year in and year out, it seems like, especially since being on the Rams, just continues to produce but just does not get respected. I think he's ranked pretty well this year, but I don't want to go in my drafts and not get Robert Woods. Like, if he's sitting there in the 4th round, even the 5th round, you have to take him. And this guy's going to be a wide receiver too. Doesn't miss games, as I said. I know Robert Woods is not the sexiest pick. He doesn't have like the super high ceiling that some guys behind him may have, but he's not a guy I want to stay away from. Robert Woods is going to help you win fantasy championships this year, I think. So he should be a wide receiver too when it's all said and done. He's being ranked as 1, which is good, obviously, but if you're a guy that's risk averse in fantasy drafts, I think Robert Woods is your guy. If you're the type of guy that goes for, 1 receiver with a bunch of upside and then you try to take a steady wide receiver too, I think Robert Woods is that guy. Like, let's say hypothetically you go DJ Moore in round 3 and then in round 4 Robert Woods is sitting there. I think that's a great way to pivot and go for a more consistent guy. So if you want that consistency and a guy that when you look at the end of the year you can go, oh crap, he had some really good numbers, I think Robert Woods is that guy for sure. So I definitely want to have him on my teams. Lastly, we have the running back for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor, a rookie, 2nd-round pick. So he put up some ridiculous numbers at Wisconsin. I know that's a great school for running backs and their numbers, but you can't really overlook that. Now he goes to a team that Pro Football Focus has as their number 1 offensive line, which is fantastic news. He has a quarterback in Phillip Rivers that loves dumping the ball off to his running backs. That'll help his reception totals. I think he's in a perfect situation right now. I know I have a bunch of rookie running backs on this list, but still, I think he's in a great situation. I think he can win some people some leagues. leagues. So he gives me some Arian Foster vibes, honestly. I don't know what it is, but he reminds me of Arian Foster in a way. I don't know if it's the number, but whatever it is. Arian Foster was a great fantasy running back for not the longest stretch, but was fantastic for a while. So I think he's in a great situation there. They took him second round. It's a high investment. I don't fear Marlon Mack too much. He's a guy that's on the final year of his contract, making $2 million. The Colts don't owe him anything at the end of the year, which is a reason to drive him into the ground, but why would you not want to try and use your future running back and a guy that you invested a second round pick in? You know what I mean? So I think he's going to be the guy, Jonathan Taylor. So I think Taylor could see around 250 carries. I think if he gets that, you're looking at 1,200 rushing yards or so, probably around double-digit touchdowns as well. This is a guy that's definitely a battering ram towards the goal line, has a really good offensive line that he can run behind. So I think the upside is through the roof for a guy like Taylor. People don't look at him as a receiver, but I think he's a pretty underrated receiver. He's a pretty good one in my opinion. So they didn't use him a ton as a receiver in college, but enough to the point where you can see the guy has some receiving potential. So there's a chance he might not be the quote-unquote immediate starter, but I don't really fear Marlon Mack too much, as I said, and even in the event that Mack is the week 1 and week 2, week 3 starter, I think eventually they'll go to Jonathan Taylor and realize he's the more talented guy. He's their future. I expect him to play really well. As I said, behind a great offensive line, has a great quarterback for his situation. I think he'll be great. He can win people some leagues, but it might take a few weeks, so I'll have to wait and see. But in my honest opinion, I expect him to be the starter week 1 and hit the ground running, but I just want to set some expectations. So with that being said, that'll conclude the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments once again your breakout players and your league winners for 2020. Tune in for the future videos we have coming up. I think, as I said, we have the undervalued, we have the overvalued, the bust, and all those type of guys, sleepers as well. So we'll have some good fantasy football videos. If you enjoyed this one, then come back and watch. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.